Hello, Warren. Thanks so much for joining us on our webinar about the new guidance for Wilson disease.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Well, first, a little background on your diagnostic journey. I understand that you were diagnosed way back in 1980 when you were only 7 years old.
Yes, at the time, I believe I was one of the youngest, if not the youngest, to be diagnosed. I would come home as a 7-year-old and be very lethargic and sleep all the time. Doctors thought I had chronic mono or spinal meningitis or something. And a young doctor just thought that, hey, let's try Wilson's. And he was right. He sent me and they found the Kaiser Fleischer rings and it started me on a regimen of penicillamine.
That's right. At that time in 1980, penicillamine was the only approved drug for Wilson disease at that time. Trientine was investigational. So how did you do on that, being diagnosed so young?
I did really well. I took my medication. I was very compliant. I stayed on a low copper diet and really lived a normal childhood, adolescence. I graduated high school, participated in everything that young people do, went off to college, graduated college, and then decided I had a calling into ministry. And so I went on to get a master's degree and become a United Methodist pastor. Met my wife at seminary at Duke and got married and had a child. And so, I was living a normal life.
And that is just so encouraging for people to hear, especially when you're diagnosed so young like that. But then, unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse.
Right. My primary care physician at one point, because of the cost of the medication, I asked, could I cut my dose? And he said, let's try it. And he monitored me for about 6 months and said everything was good. So I cut my dose in half and everything seemed to be going just fine until I had an event, a major event coming up, and had this seizure-like event that really caused a lot of neurological problems to resurface that I hadn't had before. And that's when I got involved with a neurologist. My neurologist worked with me to try and get the tremors under control. And she took me as far as she could and recommended that I seek out a Wilson's disease specialist. And so she referred me on to Dr. Schiltzky at Yale. And when I saw Dr. Schiltzky and told him about cutting the dose in half, he said, that's the problem. And he made me this promise. He said, I can promise it's not going to get any worse. It may not get any better, but it's not going to get any worse. And he took me back up to my original dose.
And how did you do from there?
I've slowly improved, actually. I've been under his care for about 11, 12 years now, and have slowly gotten better and have been able to once again enjoy a normal life. I am unfortunately on disability because of the neurological damage that has been done. But other than that, can do pretty much what I can't, what I can do.
So based on this experience, Warren, what advice would you give to other Wilson disease patients?
If at all possible, I would say seek out a specialist. While there are great doctors out there and more doctors are learning about Wilson's disease, you really need to seek out a specialist. They know what's best, and they can help you, and figure out the disease a whole lot better. So that's the best advice I can give, is to seek out a specialist.
Well, Warren, I'm so sorry that you went through this, and at the same time, very thankful that the medication was able to rescue you again. And thank you for sharing your experience and your advice with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.